this morning I find myself in unfamiliar territory, an uncomfortable territory, listening to Gabby Abonglaho and finding out that I actually agree and believe that Gabby has a point on something.
What?
Indeed.
Really?
It was as shocking to me as it may well be to you.
And what was that point?
Well, he has a point about Crystal Palace and substitutions in games that are being made to preserve an outcome on the weekend rather than the game that you're playing in, and the respect and reflection that must have to the hundreds of Crystal Palace fans that have travelled across the country to try and win an FA Cup game.
You're talking about when Roy decided to substitute Eze in the second half.
I'm talking about Gabby's version and rendition of events, and I find myself, albeit I never like to delve too deeply into Crystal Palace affairs for reasons well rehearsed between you and I, but the point is I actually concur with him. So it feels like I need to go home and have a good shower and maybe read a couple of Enid Blyton books to be able to enhance my IQ.
Well, for those who don't know, last night, of course, Everton up against Crystal Palace, and they were going out. Crystal Palace were going out, and then a smattering of dissent came from their way end after Roy Hodgson's decision to substitute Eberechi Eze in the second half. It was met with boos and chants of you don't know what you're doing. So obviously this struck a nerve with Gabby, and of course with your good self, Simon. This is what Roy had to say about why he did that.
We had to think very carefully about it, but the fact is, as I've rightly said, I appreciate for the fans. It's a long way to come, and we appreciate their support. I would have been disappointed to see Eze go off because Eze is one of our best players. But I also would have been extremely disappointed as a fan if he'd have played another 30 or 35 minutes, got injured in the process, or put himself in a situation where he can't go out onto the field against Arsenal. That would have been extra disappointing for me. Because even without him on the field, I thought we did more than enough to cause Everton problems and create goal chances. In fact, I would say that in the last 30 minutes of the game, we had 3 or 4 exceptional goal chances. But once again, we can only blame ourselves. We didn't take them.
Simon, I know you prickle a bit when we say the current Palace seems to lack ambition, but when you're 1 down to Everton in an FA Cup tie, you want to stay in the game, obviously, because Andre Gomez's goal in 42 minutes is the only difference between the two sides. Yeah. And if anyone's going to get your goal, it might well be Eze. But Roy's thinking, I don't want Eze not to be with us at the weekend. Yeah. So as of tonight, I'm taking him out the equation.
Yeah.
That doesn't compute with me. I don't understand why. Because Eze could have got them back in the game.
But there's logic to it. But whether you like that logic is a different matter. I mean, you're in a cup competition. You're playing in a replay. You've allowed the player to play for 67 minutes, unless there's a fitness question about the fact that he's come back in recent times and he isn't able potentially to play 2 games in a week, and you'd rather preserve him, or ultimately you accepted from the outset you were only going to play him for a period of the game, then the sentiments to me, the optics of it, and I hate the optics as a matter of course because I hate looking at the world through optics, aren't great. But I have to say, I mean, I like Roy Hodgson. I don't like the way he embraces the media at this stage in his life. I like him as a football man. I like him as a fella. He clearly is capable. I don't like him as a football tactician in terms of the way he plays football. I didn't like him as an England manager. I didn't think that he played proactive football. I think he played reactive football. Mm-hmm. I think he manages clubs of a certain size. And when it comes to clubs with big expectations and big ideals about how they play and what they win, I think he comes up short. And we've seen that in instances of managing England and Liverpool. There are big clubs with big expectations, but when you get him into West Bromwich Albion and Fulham at Palace, he can meet the expectations of it. I'm never calling for someone to be sacked, really, but I think this has run its course. I think the Palace fans should be appreciative of the fact that someone has managed to keep them out of the way of harm for the majority of the time that he's been in there. He hasn't been given an inordinate amount of resources. They don't spend big. But the club has been in the Premier League for 10 years. It's been in the Elite League, and for the first time in its history, over its 119-year history, for 10 years in a row. So there has to be said something about that, but everything does have to evolve. And with Roy, I think that he was a safe pair of hands to get you through a set of circumstances. To me, it lacked ambition to retain him, not because he isn't capable, but because everything needs to perhaps change and freshen up. And I find myself in a situation where I feel that Palace need to make a change. Not now, but certainly at the end of the season. And it certainly needs to be a change that embraces a whole raft of thinking.
I mean, you want to stay in the FA Cup as long as you possibly can. And Eze might have done... Who knows? It's hypothetical. He might just have given them that lifeline.
Maybe.
that would take them into round 4 of the FA Cup. Who knows? As you speak, Simon, Crystal Palace fans are calling in. And Dan, we're going to break with tradition a bit and go early on this. Dan's a big Palace fan who's got a point he wants to make. So we'll bring him to air. Dan, good morning.
Morning, chaps. You all right?
Very good, thank you, mate. Good to have you on board. I know it's not so much me, it's your former owner you'd love to talk to, and he's right beside me. What do you want to say?
Right. I'm in a situation where it's one of those, you just feel a bit tired about the situation. I spoke to the sports bar a couple of months ago when we were driving home from
Sorry about that.
And it, yeah. To be fair, they were pretty good. Carlton Cole, it was a good chat. But the fact of the matter is that all of this could potentially be avoided. Hodgson shouldn't have been employed in the summer anyway. And my issue is, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to be blunt, my issue is I think the media don't put Parish under enough pressure. We seem to be overlooked quite a lot in the media. It's, Hodgson's a stable hand. He'll keep you mid-table. Danny Murphy says it all the time. Great bloke, keep you mid-table. But no one probably watches the matches to see that it's horrific. It's horrific to watch. It's dire. It's negative. Hodgson holds out for hoping to only lose 1-0. He shouldn't have been employed in the summer, but Parish plods for long. He's never reactive. Sorry, he's never proactive. He just reacts to stuff. He's done it throughout our tenure in the Premier League. He keeps.
I don't think that's true, Dan. I don't think that's true, Dan. And you know my view on Parish, right? It's well rehearsed, right? But when you make decisions, you take Ollie out and you put Pulis in. He's made decisions at times that have been key components of the side staying in the Premier League. He went after De Boer because he wanted an expansive brand of football. It didn't work. He changed it quickly. He brought in Patrick Vieira, which I thought was an educated punt, and he stayed with it for a period of time. And then he's gone back to solidity. He doesn't have much money, right? The majority of the money that he's made is off the back of Crystal Palace. The other investors aren't particularly motivated to put more money in, so the only money that Palace have got is the revenue that they generate. So with that in mind, what do you want him to do?
Well, okay. Well, you look at. We'll go back to the managerial appointments.
Yeah.
Every managerial appointment has always been late in the summer when he's courted other people and he's gone for the third or fourth option down the line. That's not really proactive, as far as I'm concerned.
But again, Dan, why do you think that is? Because if you're trying to pitch for a manager that's in demand, you've got to sell him something. You've got to pitch him a woo. And if that woo is, we're not going to give you a lot of dough, and we have a squad that we've got, and we haven't got enormous amounts of money, then you're at the hands of managers that go, well, there are better options for me.
Okay, but why haven't we got the money? Why do we keep giving
That's a good
contracts?
Dan, do you know what? That's a good question, mate. You've been ever present, Simon, in the Premier League, as you constantly tell us.
But look at your wage bill and look at the profits of Palace.
I know, but why have we... So this is the issue. So we've got players that we keep... So we extend contracts to players that shouldn't be even in the squads. Why, instead of getting us a right back, he gives contract extension to aging players. Players like Schlupp, who 90% of Palace fans would probably say he shouldn't even be there. Joel Ward isn't good enough to be a Premier League right back. Realistically, neither is Nathaniel Klein, and we're in this situation. And then when we do need a right back, where do we get the money from? Because we've not invested in buying players with resale values. We've only been doing that the last couple of years.
Dan, is it your opinion last night was another big missed opportunity last night?
Massively, massive opportunity. And we're not going to beat Arsenal on Saturday. We never were going to. So why not actually go after it? But we haven't got the squad. So we've got injured players, and he goes up there. But even with the squad we've got, he would rather go and set up negatively and hope to soak up everything and maybe get a break. Mateta's not good enough. Edouard can play, but Edouard doesn't get fed. We've got Eze comes off the pitch, and Eze's probably one of the only players who can create something. He's off the pitch. We haven't got anyone to replace him. We've apparently got this Cat 1 Academy that Steve Parish preaches to everybody about, but Roy Hodgson won't play any of those players. Either they're not good enough or Hodgson's not good enough. One of those two.
What was the difference? What was the difference, Dan, between the way the Palace played when Roy came back after Vieira, and I got lots of information about the fallout with Vieira and how it worked and why the coaching staff wasn't this and wasn't that and what Vieira's high-handed attitude was like with players and coaches. But there was this bump when Hodgson came in terms of attacking football, and people were noticing the fact that there was a difference between the Roy Hodgson that was there previously and the Roy Hodgson that was there now. And he said, I've got better players.
I would say the only thing I can think of, because that's one of those big conundrums. How does that happen that we were playing so well, free-flying, and we were taking the mickey out of teams like Leeds away, and we were doing it?
People doing that.
I can think Well, yeah, okay. But the only thing I can think of, yeah, exactly, you could argue a lot of people would do that as well, so maybe it wasn't that great. But we haven't got Wilfred Zaha within our squad now.
Dan, listen, we're at 10:15. Round this off for me. Round it off for me. What do you want? What do you want?
Well, personally, I want the board to be changed, but that's not going to happen. So more than anything, I think Hodgson needs to go. If he doesn't, if these other teams like Forest and Everton get their points back, or rather Everton get their points back and Forest don't get points deducted, we're going to be in trouble.
Dan, listen, I want to thank you for your call because we knew you had a lot on your mind and you pushed and pushed to come on air, and we brought with tradition a bit early. We've changed our running order a bit to entertain you, and we were absolutely right in doing so. So Palace fans, you heard from Dan there, who's passionate in his view about where Crystal Palace are today. You went out the cup last night, and what really gets his goat is that Roy decided to substitute Eberechi Eze in the second half, and that was met up at Goodison with booze and chants if you don't know what you're doing. Where are Crystal Palace now? You're out the cup. You're not going to get relegated. You're going to finish in the Premier League. But where is this club going? 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.